All right. Sorry that this one was out of the ordinary. There were some things that were going on today, but here we are. Normal time for this will still be Mondays at 7, and now that one of my classes is over at Michigan, Thursdays at 7 as well, to kind of preview the Saturday following the Tuesday, obviously. So today I really want to talk about just a few things, mainly the big wins. That's really what today's episode is going to be about, is discussing the big wins, top 10 matchup types this week. That's what we're going to be talking about here. So it's Tennessee, Alabama. It's Penn State, Michigan. It's USC, Utah. The victors being Utah, Michigan, and Tennessee. Alabama was favored by 9. Utah was favored by 3.5. Michigan was favored by 7. So the favorites in these matchups were 2-1. Tennessee winning was a huge upset. A lot of people picked Penn State, despite Penn State's inability to win in the big house against, Michigan teams who've been classified as good. I can imagine USC was also a pretty popular pick, despite Utah being favored, as USC was 6-0 entering this game. Utah was 4-2. USC has a lot flashier players, better talent, the flashier coach, just better everything. Period. Amen. Hey, thank you, Grant, for the $2. It's always appreciated when you guys donate. Hey, Grant, how are you doing? Zach Scout says go green. John says go blue. Hey, amazing. How are you all doing? I agree, but says good win over Penn State. Time to lose to our daddy, Mel Tucker. No, that is not, no, I don't see that happening. It's always a possibility, but I think that given the nature of what Michigan State is versus what Michigan is, no, I don't see it. Don't see it happening. Doesn't mean there isn't a possibility, but I have a very hard time seeing that happen. I just do. Very hard time seeing it. So, speaking of that game, there aren't odds out for it yet, at least according to ESPN, because Michigan has a bye week this week. But Michigan's favored to win 90-10. They're favored to win 9-1 to MSU, according to ESPN's FPI. Michigan State's been scoring and allowing about the same points per game. Michigan's been scoring 42.7 points per game and only allowing 12. Michigan allows nearly 200 less total yards per game. They gain more than 130 total yards per game compared to MSU, or more than 120. I think the exact number is like 124 more yards per game than MSU. So Michigan, by all accounts, should win. If you lose to Tucker, I will donate $20 on the next stream, and I keep my word on it. Good for you, Zach. Please do that, because I will appreciate all the money in the world if my team gets humiliated by Mel Tucker. I would crawl up into a ball. And you know what? The reaction video for Michigan State versus Michigan, if Michigan State wins, will be opening with a minute of silence. And I will put that too. Like before the video, I will say a minute of silence for Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan program. And it will be a minute of silence. That would be an embarrassing loss. Anyway, though, I want to get into some of these games. So let's start off there. Let's read the chat before that. Cubs Hockey says go white. I have less faith this year than I did as a 27-point underdog in 2020. Wow. Zach says, I remember last year's reaction you had with the MSU. Yeah, I was disgusted. That was terrible. Amazing. Love the chaos that happened this week. Down goes the Tide. Certified. Clapaholic. Michigan is not losing to MSU after last season. This team is still salty. Yup. I wouldn't say they got robbed I'm not going to go there. I think blaming the refs for a loss I don't agree with that. But I can say that Michigan feels like they've been robbed, and that will totally fuel what I think will be a bludgeoning of Michigan State in Ann Arbor. Speaking of Michigan, let's first talk about Michigan and Penn State, and then we'll get into USC, Utah. We'll do Alabama, Tennessee, because that's what we're looking for here. Alabama, Tennessee was the game of the week. Now, as a Michigan fan, I would say that Michigan, Penn State's the game of the week, but in the objective term of things, separating my feelings from reality, Alabama, Tennessee is beyond. That's up here in the game of the week. Michigan, Penn State is truly more closer to the bottom because it was a blowout. Michigan, Penn State, and I already made a reaction video on this, but I want to just want to talk about it some more because I feel like I can. James Franklin, what are you doing? Michigan put Penn State from the 5th best rushing defense in the nation to the 51st best rushing defense in the nation in one game. Michigan had more rushing yards in this game than Penn State allowed all year. Penn State only allowed 300-something all year. Penn State only allowed an average of 74, 75-something rush yards per game. They now on average allow 136 rushing yards per game. It's terrible. That is atrocious. Penn State, if they played close in this game or if they had won, would probably be like a 14-point favorite over Minnesota. Michigan beat them so badly. Penn State has a whiteout game against Minnesota, who's 4-2. They're only favored by 4.5 at home. That tells you that Penn State would be a underdog on the road, likely, against Tanner Morgan and PJ Fleck, knowing that Tanner Morgan might not even play. Penn State is a good team. Don't get me wrong, but as Wolf58 has pointed out in the chat, and one day I'm going to be able to highlight chats, and that will be cool for this live stream, Wolf58 said, as of today, James Franklin is a combined 7-18 versus Ohio State, MSU, and Michigan. He's 3-5 versus Michigan. The Michigan teams he beat were the 2020 team, 2019 team, and the 2017 team. That right there are 3 Michigan teams with a combined 19 wins over the course of 3 seasons. And not only that, those teams those 3 teams that James Franklin beat, the Michigan teams, were a combined 19-13 in record. Has not beaten a good Michigan team. He's beaten the only good team that he's beaten of all of those teams was one against OSU. He beat one good team out of OSU, MSU, and Michigan. Well, one great team. The 2019 Michigan team was a good team. He beat one great team. James Franklin is incapable of beating great teams. He did it once. It was a fluke. It was a blocked field goal, returned for 6, amazing play. That catapulted their season. They can't beat great teams. They can't do it. Franklin and Mel, along with Harbaugh before his pay cut, have proven that overpaying your coaches is detrimental to your program. Franklin, that's a definite case. It's a definite case. Definite case. I mean, they got immediate impact freshmen, which I said they would get. I said that they would have immediate impact freshmen, that Singleton and Dennis Sutton would have a chance to start before the year. And, well, I mean, here we are. Nick Singleton had an even better impact than I thought he would. Michigan shut him down. Michigan just owned Penn State in every regards. Michigan put like a shock collar on the Nittany Lion, and every time the Nittany Lion just moved its whiskers, it went bzzz. It was that bad. The score could have been 52-0 or 52-7, 52-3. It wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. And Cubs hockey 9, he lost to a 6-6 MSU at home in 2018. Many plays. You could argue that James Franklin and Sean Clifford are the equivalents of each other, performing well against lesser competition, but won't necessarily get you to the promised land. Amen to that. Amen. Amen to that. Now, with Michigan and Jim Harbaugh in 2016 had a top 10 win against Wisconsin, and I don't think he had another top 10 win after that. Maybe I'm wrong, though, or I don't know. He had one top 10. Oh, he had a top 10 win against Notre Dame in 2019. Those teams, which Jim Harbaugh beat, Notre Dame and Wisconsin, they didn't finish in the top 10, or they barely finished in the top 10. In the past 2 years, Jim Harbaugh has had 2 top 10 wins. One of those teams was the first team that he beat to finish in the top 5 in Ohio State. This year's Penn State team, I doubt they finish in the top 10. They'll get at least one more loss, maybe 2 more losses, maybe even 3. I could see this Penn State team finishing 8-5 or 9-4, honestly. But Penn State has done something this year that they haven't done since their 2019 or 2017 selves, which is they've gone on the road and just won, regardless of whether the competition is good or not. And that Purdue win? Purdue's a good football team, so this Penn State team isn't a bad team by any means. Michigan blew out a solid unit. They put up 563 yards on that team, more than doubled Penn State's yardage total. And Penn State had fluky plays that went their way. They were in the right place in the right time. And fluky plays, listen, fluky plays happen. MSU versus Michigan. Oh, he has trouble with the snap. That's a fluky play. Doesn't remove MSU's win from the win column. They deserved that win. But it was a play that we can all say might not have happened in the other 1,000 simulations. That doesn't discount it. It's just saying that the score of this game was really an illusion. It was an illusion of how close it was. This was more like a 50-0 type football game. And yeah, oh wow, that trouble with the snap play was 7 years ago today. It's crazy. Full Metal Pilot, and then we'll talk about the other games. What's worse for Penn State is that James Franklin got a 10-year contract extension last year, so there will be only more results like this going forward within the next decade. The good news for Penn State fans, Full Metal Pilot, is that buyouts no longer matter because Paul Chryst and Scott Frost were fired. Penn State is a bigger football program, and they have more money than Nebraska and Wisconsin do. You don't think if James Franklin goes 7-6 next year that he will be burned and charred and thrown out of Happy Valley into the land of nothingness, or into the land of Nick Saban rehabilitation, or into the land of Fiji, or the land of Bali, or the Maldives, or Sri Lanka, some island where probably Scott Frost is right now, hiding so that everyone can forget what happened. And so that everyone can forget my 10-2 prediction of Nebraska. It's bad. Michigan highlights. Michigan will be a top 10 team. Just wait. I'm right. Oh, Michigan hype lights? They are a top 10 team. This Michigan team, let me tell you something right now. I will give you all a hint of my top 25. Ohio State number 1, Michigan number 2, Georgia number 3, Tennessee number 4, Alabama number 5. That's my top 5 right there. Clemson might not even be number 6, although it's probably Clemson at number 6, 7, or 8. I'd have to look through it in more detail. I haven't looked through my previous poll and recalibrated it to post-week 7 results. I haven't yet. But I think right now, and Mike Valenti today helped me to convince this, I think Michigan and Ohio State are the 2 best teams in the nation right now. Yes, Georgia and Alabama have more stars, but you know what? Michigan's played a tougher schedule than Georgia has. Michigan has looked more impressive in recent weeks than Georgia has. And let me tell you something else. Alabama's had a much tougher schedule than Michigan has, but Alabama lost. Alabama took an L in Knoxville. Alabama had 17 penalties for 130 yards. Alabama they averaged 4 yards per carry against Tennessee's defense, which is not a good defense or an efficient defense. They struggled to run the football against Tennessee. They just did. Their O-line isn't good. And Tennessee wasn't even at their best. Tennessee had a fumble returned for, 6. They had a pick. Their secondary players were out. They didn't have Cedric Tillman, and this is where we'll get into Tennessee, Alabama. That's where we'll go. What are the odds we'll get a 1 versus 2 matchup November 26th, Minnie asks. The odds, I would say, are not high, because the more I think about it, the more I think Tennessee is going to beat Georgia, which would make Tennessee the number 1 team in the country. Now, Tennessee, they're not playing invincible right now. There's a very good chance they could lose even before they could get to Georgia if Kentucky somehow catches them napping, which I don't think they will, but there's a good chance. Because of the situation, if a 1 versus 2 matchup has to happen, the most likely scenario of that will be Tennessee loses to Kentucky or someone random, but they beat Georgia, because I don't see Georgia losing to someone random. They're too deep. They're too well coached. It's like Alabama. They're too deep. They're too well coached. They're only losing to a good team. Tennessee's the kind of team that I could see lose to a random. Easily. They could lose to a random here. But talking about Alabama, Tennessee, this is what I want to get into. 52-49. 52-49. And Tennessee, going back to them not playing at their best, was 0-2 on 4th down. Alabama outgained them in total yards, just by 2, but still outgained them. Alabama dominated TOP. Alabama had 3 more first downs. Alabama had 1 less turnover. The difference is, Alabama had 17 penalties for 130 yards. Tennessee just had 6 for 39. Another difference that people wouldn't realize, too, is that for a team, the game that Tennessee plays, if they can torch your secondary, TOP doesn't matter because they have an elite quarterback. Tennessee doesn't care about defense. Their game is, look me in the eye and outscore me, because I can run faster than you. I can outpace you. You may beat me up in a fight, but this isn't a small arena we're playing in. This is 100 yards by I don't know how many yards, but this is a big surface area we're playing on. You might be bigger than me, you might be more physical than me, but I know that I'm faster than you, and I will tire you out. TOP doesn't matter for a team like Tennessee. Now, that might be an exaggeration, but look, Alabama had like 15 more minutes of TOP than Tennessee did, and Tennessee beat them by 3. By 3. Like, Tennessee just won the game, and they beat them by 3, and I say that with the fact that Tennessee was injured. They didn't have Cedric Tillman. They had walk-on secondary players, from what I heard. It was just, it was sort of unreal. When I saw that Tennessee was down by 7 at the end of the 4th, I'm like, they're going to lose. Now, credit, I wasn't watching that game. I was watching a different game, MSU, Wisconsin, because I'm a Big Ten kind of guy. And in the future, that might change. I think I'm going to start prioritizing bigger matchups over some smaller Big Ten matchups. But when I saw at the end that Tennessee's tied it and they're in Alabama territory, I'm like, Alabama, what did you do? Like, when Alabama is down by 18 points, which they were, and they storm back with momentum, they typically break you. 2013 Texas A&M is the exact example of what this game should have been if Alabama was prime Alabama. That's what they did in that Texas A&M versus Alabama game in 2013, where Johnny Manziel was the quarterback, and he was, fantastic, just like Hendon Hooker. And he made some mistakes in that game, just like Hendon Hooker did. The difference is, Alabama doesn't play that style of football anymore. And this Alabama defense is far worse than that Alabama defense was. You don't have Trent Richardson, who can run, and an O-line combined with him that will run for 4 yards a carry or more every play and control the game in the proper way. You aren't as disciplined because 17 penalties for 130 yards is like unheard of for any team except Scott Frost's Nebraska on their worst day. The special teams blunders, all of it was just not good for Alabama. And Alabama's still a good football team. Alabama still hung 49 points on a top 4 team while playing undisciplined football. Alabama's great. They're top 10. At worst, Alabama's top 15. And this would be like a fluke year for Saban, like the 2010 year, where they have a lot of talent. They returned a lot of guys. They had it all going for them in theory, but in reality, they didn't. And they lose some additional games. Like I could see Alabama losing to Ole Miss or losing the SEC title game for their first time ever this year. Honestly. Lath, I agree. Alabama was just completely undisciplined. The most points that Alabama's given up against an opponent since 1907. Oh, yeah. And then certified clapaholic, the Bama team being undisciplined. They struggled against Texas and Texas A&M. It's just... It's bad. Call it what it is. It's nasty. It's... This Alabama... Michigan? You line up Michigan against this Alabama team, and you know what Michigan would do to this Alabama team? Michigan would beat Bryce Young into the ground. They'd abuse them at the line of scrimmage. They would hold Jahmyr Gibbs to one modestly big play, which would not be a long touchdown run, and they would dominate TOP. And they would probably, in my humble opinion, beat Alabama by a touchdown, 10 or anywhere from 7 to 17 points. They would beat the Crimson Tide. Tennessee's a different story because Tennessee is much more explosive on offense than Alabama is. And seeing that Tennessee was able to somewhat limit Alabama's run game, granted part of that's because of Alabama's O-line, I think Tennessee would match up better with Michigan. Honestly. I think Tennessee would match up better with Michigan than Alabama would. Hendon Hooker was, I don't even know. I don't think he was sacked, but he was sacked one time. One time against Alabama. Tennessee got a singular sack against Bryce Young, and Tennessee's talent disparity, Alabama's miles more talented than Tennessee is, which tells you how inefficient and undisciplined this Alabama team is. So for Alabama, Rips or Win 1, love the channel, go live more often. I'm going to go live every Monday and every Thursday. I appreciate the $2. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. And then Blue, I want to see Tennessee versus Ohio State. That game, that'd be like a 63 to 56 kind of game. Hi, Peter Shea. How are you doing? It's and then Lath. I couldn't believe how Tennessee moved the ball on them. I couldn't either. Jalen Hyatt had 6 receptions for 207 yards for 34.5 yards per what is this? What is that? He had half of his season touchdown receptions against a defense that is supposedly that was entering this game viewed as possibly the number 1 defense in the country. It's insanity. It's blasphemy. It's heresy. This Alabama defense is just their secondary. Their secondary essentially opened a bottle of Coca-Cola and sat on the couch and said, "Do it without us." And Hendon Hooker just went, "Okay." So that's that. Tennessee 52, Alabama 59, 49. Tennessee is one of the best teams in the country right now. There's an argument for them to be number 1. There's an argument for Michigan to be number 1. There's an argument for Ohio State to be number 1. There's an argument for Georgia to be number 1. I frankly think off of recent success, Georgia out of those 4 is the least of an argument to be number 1, but because they were last year's national champion, out of those 4 games, they have the most talent according to the talent composite by 24/7 Sports. And their win against Oregon is looking ever more impressive. So that's my top 4 would be Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, Tennessee. All 4 of them have an argument to be number 1 in the country. I think only those 4 teams have an argument to be number 1 in the country. Clemson and UCLA have a chance if over time they can, in my opinion, prove themselves more to me, but maybe they do have an opportunity to be number 1, and I just don't see it yet. But let's move on. We're done with Alabama, Tennessee. We're done with Penn State, Michigan. Let's talk about USC and Utah, and what I can only describe as beautiful. I like Caleb Williams as a person. I don't like... Actually, it has nothing to do with Caleb Williams. I like Caleb Williams. I like good players. But I don't like this whole transfer portal thing to a certain degree. I don't like what Lincoln Riley did. And maybe I'm biased toward him, but all I'm going to say is USC led or tied this entire game. And they never trailed until the final 48 seconds. And they lost. They lost. How beautiful is that? That's awesome. Kyle Whittingham just looked USC in the eye and said, "You have all the talent in the world. You get up on us early. We make some mistakes, and we're not losing." Kyle Whittingham did in this game what Mel Tucker did to Michigan last year. USC is still the better team than Utah. In my opinion, at least. I mean, they only have 1 loss. It came off a 2-point conversion. USC, in theory, made less mistakes. I mean, honestly. And yet, it doesn't matter, because USC still lost, and hopefully they don't get to the playoff. Because if they do, they would... tell you something. Any team in my top 4, in my view of it, would kill USC. Autumn McComb, OSU student and fan here, and I'm really glad that I found this channel. You do so well covering the Big Ten, also best team in the Pac-12. It's a mess. Utah or USC? Well, I don't know. Part of me wants to say UCLA, because UCLA handled Utah pretty well. UCLA also handled Washington extremely well. I mean, UCLA's just been handling teams recently. If you talk about the past few weeks, UCLA by far is the most impressive team in the Pac-12. UCLA and then USC and Utah, they're still impressive, but they're not over here. They're in a different category. So thank you, Autumn, again for the $5. Lath, Tennessee won't go too far if their defense doesn't step up. Stetson Bennett will nail the Tom Brady deep ball, and it could be over. That could very well happen. Blue, better for Michigan versus Ohio State championship game. Now we just need Clemson to lose. Clemson traveling to Notre Dame. Pay attention to that. Clemson, to me, let me tell you what this is. They're not 2014 FSU fraudulent. They're not. Clemson, to me, seems like a team that finds ways to win. And it's not because they have Jameis Winston at quarterback. It's not like they're being carried. They're finding ways to win because they have Dabo Swinney as head coach, and because Dabo Swinney's a good football coach, and because he's efficient, and he's a top 5 coach, and I don't get why people forgot he was top 5. I underestimated how good DJ Uiagalelei was. I think we all underestimated how good Dabo was at filling his voids in the staff, because Brandon Streeter is looking better as a coordinator. Mickey Kahn is looking better as a coordinator. The staff changes are looking better every time Clemson wins. Every time. Michigan Ipe Lights. Michigan will make the playoffs, win or lose OSU game as long as we were 11-0. If USC loses again, if Clemson has an L, if most of the SEC teams but one have an L, very good chance you're right there. Dabo Swinney is mid. Well, I hate to break it to you, Hype Lights, but he's 7-0. And if Clemson goes 12-0 or 13-0, it doesn't matter if they lose the first game in the playoff. Getting 12 or 13 wins, period, amen, is hard. Clemson is good, but I agree with Clapaholic in the fact that I don't think they're top 4. I don't even think they're top 5 or 6. Like, they're not the first 2 teams out. They're not. NC State isn't any good. Let me look at Wake Forest, because I don't even know Wake Forest's record at the current moment. Wake Forest, they beat FSU, they beat Army. They had 2, it looks like they've had 2 bye weeks. They're ranked 13th. It seems like Wake Forest is the best team they played, and Wake Forest is a huge talent disadvantage to Clemson. They have a huge, not just talent disadvantage, but like, it's mainly talent disadvantage, and they took them to overtime. NC State isn't good. With Devin Leary, they're above average. Without him, they're mediocre or below average. So, I don't know. Don't know at all. All I know is to get back to Utah, USC. USC had 556 total yards to Utah's 562. Utah had 1 turnover. Utah had 31 first downs. USC had 28. USC had 28 minutes of TOP. Utah had 31:50 TOP. I find it so beautiful that Utah trailed or was playing catch up this entire game, and at the end of it, we're like, we're not playing catch up. We're going to go for 2. And they get the 2-point conversion, and you can just see on the USC players, the life has been drained from them. Drained. Like, period, amen. And Cameron Rising, I had in my preseason that he was a better quarterback than Caleb Williams. And QB rating statistics would tell you that. Caleb Williams is the 9th best QBR. Cameron Rising is the 4th best QBR. Passer rating, Rising is a 161. Caleb Williams has a 162. So pretty darn close there. Caleb Williams definitely has better receivers and definitely better talent surrounding him. There's no doubt that Rising is the more efficient QB. Rising led the team in rushing and in passing against USC. That USC, I'll tell you that USC defense, they surrendered 43 points. At the same time, you can say that USC defense is better than we all thought it was going to be. USC is better than a lot of people thought they're going to be. They're probably going to finish as a top 15, maybe top 10 team. They're definitely the team in the Pac-12 with the highest ceiling. That's for sure. Absolutely for sure. So, looking at these, USC versus Utah was a great game. Tennessee versus Alabama. I mean, those 2 games were great games. Back and forth, you name it. Different momentum changes. I mean, you look at the game cast, you look at the win probability, and it's like this for Utah USC. It's like a wave, and the troughs and the points where it's like a wave. It's going up and down, up and down. The only time there's red in favor of Utah to win is at the beginning of the game until about 5 minutes in the first quarter. You see it again very briefly early in the third quarter at 13:20. You see it again at 10:40 in the fourth. And then the next time you see it is with 48 seconds left in the fourth. I mean, Utah, in this game, for most of it, had less than a 50% chance to win. And at the end of the day, they won it. Classic college football game. Tennessee dominated or was pretty 50-50, but I think led by a slight margin in how many minutes they occupied as the favorites to win, according to the win probability calculator, because they got up early on Alabama. When I saw it was 21-7, I'm like, oh, Alabama came in here thinking they would win because they were Alabama, if you know what I'm saying. But great win for Kyle Whittingham, great win for Josh Heupel, great win for Jim Harbaugh. And I mean, to talk about the Big Ten, Brett Bielema had a good win, Mel Tucker had a good win, you name it. Oh, Mike Locksley in Maryland had a good win. They're 5-2, 2-2 in conference, and they're probably going to go 8-4, maybe 7-5 at worst, but they're going to have a better regular season record for sure than they did last year. And with their offense, with how they can run the football, their good offensive line, their good pass game, this team could absolutely beat Penn State. Maryland could absolutely beat Penn State. So they could go 9-3. They could only suffer one more loss to OSU. It would be expected. And Blake Dean, thank you for the $5. My wife and I made a bet in the preseason. The winner of the MSU versus U of M game will be our child's first outfit after they are born. I'm regretting it now. Are you trying to tell me you're a Michigan State fan, Blake? Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. Although maybe you're a Michigan fan and you're just nervous that Michigan was 7-0 like last year, and they lost to Michigan State after being 7-0. I mean, let me spend an extra 5 minutes on this, and then we'll close out the live. If Michigan loses to Michigan State, I will shave my head. I will literally shave my head if we lose to Michigan. And now I want to take that back so badly, but I'm not going to. I will shave. Didn't say all my head. I will shave a part of my head. I'll shave a part of my head if Michigan State beats Michigan, because it shouldn't happen. Michigan State's 3-4. Mel Tucker looks like Bobby Williams 2.0 in game management. And this Michigan team looks like the best team of the Jim Harbaugh era. I mean, after yesterday, there's a part of me that is confident that this team is better than last year's team. Wow. Zach, I keep my word on that $20. You just make that live stream. King Sam is back. Thank you, Spaghetti Chris. Mini plays Maryland is tough because Talia got carted off the field, so their future is uncertain. Thank you for letting me know that. I did not pay attention to that at all. Do an undercut. I will look that up and determine whether that's an option or not. Blue, can I get a tuck coming? No. Well, okay, you can. Tuck coming. Peter Shea, do it, and I will give $100. $100. Wow. Well, I'll be seeing you soon, so give it to me then. $100. That's crazy. Do a mohawk. I put $500. Wow. Since when are we talking about $100? Clayton Amboy. I put $500 on Michigan to win it all when I went to Atlantic City yesterday. That might be a wise investment, though I do not promote sports betting. Shave your entire head. It's a beautiful being bald. I shave my head all the time. I have to be bald. Have to be. I hate having hair. Hair is completely overrated anyway. I love my head of hair. So it's painful for me to do that. But yeah, this Michigan team hasn't had a game like they did against Nebraska last year, so I think they're certainly better. They haven't had a game like they did against Rutgers last year either. Jack Harrington, how are you doing? Zach, listen here, kiddos. Sam supports gambling. Do what your idols say. I do not support gambling. Though what I will say is if I track my picks against the spread and I start doing very well, if I'm doing well against the spread and I can accurately pick things, maybe I would put something toward it. But I'm not going to say do it without educating yourself, because that's just guaranteeing that you'll lose. It's just taking an uneducated risk. Your favorite video you've ever made was that Nebraska-Georgia State game. I lost it at how mad you were. Yeah, it was disgusting, and I wasn't even mad because I was a Nebraska fan. It was just pathetic. It was horrible. I mean, the kick was just, the minute the kick missed and it panned to Scott Frost, just taking off his headset and trying not to throw it. I'm at the TV and I said out loud, "Oh, he's done." That's the face of a man who knows that he's going to be fired. That was bad. The SEC East is stronger than the SEC West, says Jack. Got to agree with you there. Pure contempt for Scott Frost. I loved every second of it. I have so many photos, screenshots, of him on my phone that I actually use for reaction purposes. Like, there's probably a face of Scott Frost on my phone for every emotion that I could feel. Like, there's one of confusion, there's one of him face palming, there's one of him laughing. It's just, he's memed. He is a meme. Like, honestly. Hello, Connor. Your team can still win the SEC West, Jack. Alabama should win it. Ole Miss is undefeated, but this Ole Miss team has played so many close games, and I don't know. I just don't know if Jackson Dart is it. Honestly. I don't. But yeah. This was a nice live stream. I'm starving, and normally I would do this earlier, but, things in life happen, but I'm going to try and make it consistent. Mondays, Thursdays, 7 p.m. I'll see you guys Thursday, and we'll preview Big Ten games, big non-Big Ten games, and we'll just talk about it and have a good time like we did tonight. So I'll see you all later. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the support. I love this awesome community. I love you guys. We hit 7,600 subs. I cannot wait for the future. I can't. We're going to hit 10,000, 15,000, beyond that. And it'll be awesome. I believe in you guys. You believe in me. And that's the beauty of YouTube. Beauty of opportunity. Have a good night, guys. Go Blue. I'll see you all on Thursday. Thursday at 7 p.m. for preview and prediction.